So I was kind of giggling because I started watching, I actually didn't finish watching the recording yet, but I started watching it and I realized you were all alone talking about
Solitude.
time. I was like, oh my gosh, that's really funny.
It was funny. And then it was actually perfect. You know what I mean? Because I was completely unfazed. You know? I was like,
Yeah,
all right, well, I guess I'm flying solo on the solitude practice
I know.
episode.
I was like, it's kind of perfect.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, well, so I'm how far did you get if you in the
Um,
replay?
oh my gosh. Um, I don't remember.
Okay.
Not that far. Yeah, not that far.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this time is for you guys. So, whether you want to talk about, I mean, I can certainly do some recapping of the class. I could just reteach the class, but I don't think that's really how we want to use the time. Although, um, we can certainly talk about the importance of a solitude practice and what solitude means to us and why it's important. But I would rather, open the floor to you all and see if there's anything else that's coming up. So we're now more than halfway through the course of Be Your Own Best Friend. So perhaps a good check-in would be um, any wins or things that you've done wonderfully for yourself, or wonderful things you've done for yourself. Any news, anything that's happened to you this week?
Well, I can just I guess I still kind of well, I'm going to work on this forever, right? On the boundaries.
Uh-huh.
Like, but I it was interesting. I did have the opportunity to talk to my husband about the food thing.
Okay.
And the other thing is when he cooks, he's one of those people who can eat like everything and it doesn't seem to affect him. And so he uses a lot of butter and cheese and breadcrumbs and which is all delicious, but not good for me.
Mm-hmm.
So there it was. He's like, okay, he's going to cook this like chicken cordon bleu, which is delicious, but it has all these things that I really don't want to eat. And so I said, okay, well, can we have chicken, but can we have it in a way without all that? And and then he's like, well, I'll make it française. And I'm like, okay, well, that's still with flour and eggs. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like I had to like go, you know, and I could tell he was getting a little irritated, and I just said, I see you're getting irritated. Like, I said, I'm not questioning your cooking ability. I tried to use the words of like, oh yeah, these boundaries are good for both of us. And I said, look, if I don't feel good and I'm all bloated and then I'm not present for you and I'm cranky and so he seemed to get that. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. So
He's,
how did it get resolved, if you don't mind my asking?
um, how did that one get resolved? Oh, I think we ended up getting takeout.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
because he was too tired. But anyway, I just, so I've had a lot of opportunities to practice the boundaries
Mhm.
um, thing. So I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, thank you. And so again, um, when you first brought this subject up, there was also, if I recall, so correct me if I'm wrong, there was also something about just not wanting to eat that late at night.
Yeah.
But maybe at that point you did want to eat something,
Oh, yeah, I
or you
did
trying
bring
to
that up.
compromise.
Yeah, I did bring that up. And he was actually fine. He's like, yeah, no, that's not a problem.
Hmm.
I was like, okay, all right, about the time. He seemed a little more delicate about you know, me saying I don't want to eat cheese and I don't want to eat dairy and I don't want to
Right,
eat, I
right.
think that was a little too much for his brain to handle.
Right. And so, again, when we talk about the boundaries and we're centered in what we need, there are two elements to it, right? One of them for you is I just don't want to eat that late at night. So you can make whatever you want, right? And I'll sit with you and have a cup of tea or whatever.
Right,
But if you were hungry and you wanted to eat something, and that's what he wanted to make, you can certainly ask, like, is there wiggle room here? Can we adjust what you're planning to make so that I can eat with you? Um, and maybe he can and maybe he can't. And those are his boundaries, right? That's like,
right,
this is what I feel like making tonight. And so you have a choice to say whether you wish to partake or not,
right,
right? So the get his irritation might have been he had his heart set on making chicken cordon bleu, you know, and you're
right.
saying, can we not do that, right? And so the point is, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but this is just a general when we go to make a boundary, it's really important that we are very clear about what it is we really want rather than skipping right to a compromise. So it's like, I know you're going to cook, so can you cook something I want? But if we really don't want to eat at all that late, then that's the boundary, is to say,
Right.
yes, please feel free to make what you want. I'll have it for lunch tomorrow or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
it's really important that we don't worry so much about like, well, I don't want to tell him not to cook, or I don't want to, you know, because it's okay for you to not have a meal late at night if that's what you don't want to do. But if you're hungry, maybe you have a couple of bites of it, or so I'm guessing, I don't know your husband at all, but I'm guessing part of the irritation came from you messing with what his plans were, right?
yeah,
Hmm. And so we want to honor his boundaries too.
yeah. That's a good point. That's actually helpful. That just gave me some clarity. So that I can be clearer actually. Yeah. Because I kind of realized I was saying to myself, there is one, well, there's 2 nights a week that I work late, and I thought, well, one night a week, I would be okay with doing a later meal. Like if it's once a week, I can handle that. Um, so I just need to just bring that up and say these other times I'm going to eat earlier. And I did mention that to him that I would eat earlier, and I said, but I'll sit with you and have a cup of tea or something. And he was fine with, he seemed okay with
Beautiful.
that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's excellent. And how are you feeling about how that all went down?
Yeah, it was a lot easier than I thought.
Right? It usually is. We make these stories up in our head, like this is going to be so horrible and they're going to hate me and they won't understand. And oftentimes people do,
Yeah.
especially when you come at it from a clear place and a place of love, which you did, sounds like. Not like you always make heavy food at night, because that's put me on the defensive. In fact, just me saying it that way, I was like, oh, my, my body just tensed up. So of course, people are going to, like, wait, what's going on? Why are you not happy with what I'm doing? And it really doesn't matter, right? If that's what gives him joy at the end of the day is to make a beautiful, heavy meal, great. That's beautiful for him. It's just not beautiful for you, you know? Yeah, but that's great. And I'm glad that it was as smooth as it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it was good to just have language to use. Like I remember Lisa had said that, like that we had all those examples to look at. Like that's amazing how helpful that was to
Hmm.
look over that and also to listen to everybody and hear like what other people had said. And it's just I found that very helpful. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you. Gloria, how are you?
Hi, sorry, I just took a shower. I just put the first shirt so I can be on
Nice.
camera, but I still need to go back and do all this stuff. But I apologize for the look. Yeah, I watched last night the replay. I stopped where you were asking about doing to pause the video to make the letter.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I need to do this before tomorrow because then I sent her the email, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, no, you know what? Like a letter to myself is important. I don't want to rush it. I want to take like a time where, because I was falling asleep a little bit. I was like very like kind of tired. So I was like, no, like I want to do this daylight in my room with my candle, so a little bit more sacred. And I thought maybe it's not bad if I send it during the weekend, right, for our next call. And that's where I stopped the video. But I think I watched mostly
Okay.
all of the rest. I didn't watch the end. And and yes, I'm sorry that you were alone. I'm like, why? Like we always like are just three people and now she's alone. Like why? And I wasn't available because I had my citizenship ceremony that Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday. Yes. Thank you. Thank
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
you. My I felt lucky.
That's so wonderful. Let's just take a moment, a little round of applause.
Thank you.
Maria, welcome. That's
Thank
so
you.
awesome. Good for you.
Thank you so much. And actually, like when the call was happening, I was like, what if I join and I just tell them I'll be in the background because like the ceremony was already over, but I have to wait to get out all like more than 1,000 people in a room, right?
Right.
I was like, no, no, better I don't. I watch the replay. And it was good because imagine if I'm only with you and I cannot speak, I can just listen. So that was a good call that I didn't join anyways. Um, and yes, well, that happened to me this week, and I had the lucky that I got really fast, like next day, an appointment to issue my passport. So that's great because normally, I mean, I was looking in other offices and it takes like the appointments were till April. So I was very lucky that next day I had the appointment and I will have the passport soon. So because I don't like to feel like, oh, I cannot travel. So,
Yeah.
even though I don't have any plans, right? But yes, and since Christina was talking about the dinner situation, um probably I just want to share what happened to me yesterday. I don't want to make a comparison or anything. I just want to share like how the dynamic happened yesterday. It's not always like that, but we had actually like a dinner um dynamic that we had completely different dinners, right? And I just want to share so maybe Christina can just listen like what happened. So my husband was like, what do you want to eat? And I'm like, well, I have this ground meat. I was thinking to make it like just cook it and I have taco seasoning, so I'll put the taco seasoning. And he's like, oh no, I don't want that, but can you split it on half and I'll have the meat with pasta and pasta sauce like a bolognese and you can have the other one. And I'm like, yes. And then I was like, I'm too lazy to separate cook. And I'm like, no, you know what? Like, let's do it all together. I mean, the whole thing together. And I will eat the mix of the ground meat with the pasta sauce. Instead of pasta, I'll have like peeled zucchini. So the zucchini is my pasta because I didn't have to explain it. I think maybe I say I don't want to eat pasta. It's like it's too many carbs right now, right? He can eat pasta every day, basically. And then he's like, okay, so he took the pan, put the water, he was cooking the pasta, I was peeling the zucchini, like two things cooking differently, and then the main thing cooking together, and then we serve our plates, and then we sit, right? And then like at the end, we had like two different dishes that at the end, one was like shareable, right? And at the end, I steal some of the pasta because obviously it was like, oh, I'm still hungry, let me get some pasta. And yeah, so then like I said, I don't want to make it a comparison or anything. I just like um sometimes maybe, and I will say like you say, Rachel, maybe he gets irritated because she's like, can you do something else? So probably you can be like, oh, perfect. I'll cook just chicken on the grill and you do the cordon bleu, like, and then you join the kitchen. So then, and maybe he can get used to that because maybe before he's used to be the only one who's in the kitchen and cooking, etc. Right. And sometimes my husband doesn't cook a lot, and sometimes I don't want him around. So probably that's also the case. Like, hey, get out of my kitchen, I'll do the grilled chicken for you. But yes, and then especially in my case, like I have so many rules with food that sometimes I break. So my husband never know what's going on in my mind. He's always like I cannot guess, I never know if you're eating cheese or if you're not eating cheese, or and sometimes I break the rules. So yeah. And for boundaries and stuff, nothing. For solitude, I had this course, this solitude topic before with you, and before I didn't have an altar, and I bought this little thing. Before I just had my cushion for meditation, and now I bought this little drawer, or like, I don't know how to call it.
Yeah.
And then put there my Palo Santo candles, incense, and what else? I have like a book. Um, and then my mother gave me this thing. I don't know the name in English, but it's something that they put in church.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not religious, but she's always like she's very religious. So she's like we call it cirio in Spanish. So I don't know what is in the church are like big, and then sometimes like I just light it when I want to ask something, or just, and then because we're in the festival route of the film, etc. So like I wrote a letter to God and I put it next to the thing, the candle, or I don't know how to call it, the cirio, and I just light it. And I think like I'm slowly creating an altar there. I do wanna add like more like, or photos or things that are very unique. If you can give us also some examples of like what else can we put in the altar, and how the altar is interrelated, or like related with the solitude practice. If you can talk a
Excellent.
little bit about that.
Yeah, excellent questions. Christina, did you want to chime in after Gloria's sharing of her story before I launch into that?
I love that actually. And it's funny. My husband, he gets a little like territorial in the kitchen. But I'm gonna try that. The thing is too, though, is because he does usually get home, you know, like it's funny. I feel like I'm like the old lady. I could eat at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and he doesn't get home until like 6 o'clock, and then he starts cooking, and then it's like eating at like 7:30, which years ago I ate at 9 at night, and that never seemed to bother me, but now, but I would like to try that sometimes, because I think even if I eat later, as long as I eat something lighter, I would be okay. So I love that. And I really appreciate you sharing that. It's such a great idea. I can't believe I didn't really think of that. And just, on the solitary practice, it's funny because I was thinking like, you know, my mom is coming home tonight. She's been at my brother's for like 2 days. And so in between clients and stuff, I have had some downtime and then or quiet time to myself. And Tuesday I wasn't feeling well.
Mm.
And so I actually had some time just by myself, but I was like sleeping. But I crave that. I crave the solitude time. And anyway, I'm curious to listen more to the replay to hear more about what you have to say about the altar and Because that's one little challenge in my house is finding a place where I can have an altar that I could sit at. I think I have a place. I actually have an altar, but it's like in the bedroom. So
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, so that can work too. All that matters, well, okay, so we'll talk about that. But there was something else I wanted to address. Oh, Gloria and Christina, when you eventually do this exercise, which you didn't get to yet in the video, but the exercise is the following. You're going to write an email. I said letter, but you're going to write an email letter to yourself, to your highest self. And it can be about your relationship with yourself, what you'd like to have as a relationship, or what you see might be coming in the next year, what you'd like to see your relationship with yourself be like in the next year, your highest self, capital S self. It could also be about your solitude practice. By a year from now, here's what I envision my practice to be like, or what benefits I think I will receive. But really, it's as though you're writing, of course, not as though you are writing to your best friend. So it's not a formal, like a list of like, I will be doing this and that, you're just chatting with your beloved, right? So, and then you're going to email that to me, and I will be sending it back to you 1 year from that date that I get it from you. Okay, so you'll get that back, and you can read it ideally as your highest self, or in conjunction with. So it's a love letter to yourself, basically, and that can be whatever you want to that letter to be about, but something about the relationship with your highest self. And so what I was going to say, Gloria, is congratulations on listening to your intuition about what was right for you. That's what this class is all about, right? So yes, I really want to get this in. Rachel said, don't blow it off. It's in the video. It's like, do not blow this off. But it wasn't the right time for you. And so you listened to that because it's important to you. You want to do it at a certain time when you have peace and quiet. That's beautiful, right? And I just wanted to call that out so we don't gloss over it. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. And every decision that we take in our life, that's the kind of thought process we want. Wait a minute, is this right for me? Is this the right time for me? You could also have said, I don't want to do the exercise, and of course I would ask you why today, and, and we would talk about that, but that's also acceptable. You know what I mean? As long as you're coming from a clean and clear place, and it's not coming from a place of fear or shutdown or procrastination or low self-esteem, right? It's coming from your centered self, right? So you knew you wanted to spend time, careful time with this letter. Not so careful that you don't do it, right? As I like to say, and I've heard it so many times recently, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Right? So we're not looking for a perfect letter. This is just you writing to your buddy, And I can tell you, having done this exercise myself in a different workshop entirely, and it was live. So we actually hand wrote a letter to ourselves, gave it to the teacher. She collected them all and stamped them all and mailed them back to us. I don't, yeah, it was a year later. And I remember reading it going like, oh my gosh, I might have mentioned this in the video, so sorry if there's a repeat there, but I was like, wow. It was like almost like it was written from like somebody I didn't know. You know what I mean? So that's one of the beautiful things about that exercise is you can really see, you get some space and clarity when you wait that long. Okay, so I wanted to address that. Okay, so questions about the altar, what to put on the altar, and why do we do the altar for our, why is it important for our solitude practice? I do cover this in the video, maybe later, as I go through the homework, but I'm happy to repeat it here because it's important to kind of really get it in our minds. Let's start with the why first. So whenever we do anything for ourselves, there are multi-levels to why we do something. We do something for our mind, our body, and our spirit, right? So whatever choice we're doing, whether it's creating a boundary, whether it's working with our bodies for interoception, whether it's having which we're going to do next week, whether it's creating a solitude practice, we are engaging all three aspects of ourselves. So what an altar does, besides having a practical place that you can go to meditate or to read or to write in your journal or knit or whatever it is that you're into, it does that for you. But even when you're not using it, even when you're not engaged in your solitude practice, just walking by it is a symbol of your commitment to yourself. So just the fact that you have an altar is saying, I'm important enough to take time for myself every day. And it becomes this sacred space that's really just dedicated to you, which is what we want. And so on an unconscious level, as well as a conscious level, but also on an unconscious level, every time you see that altar, it resonates with your commitment to connection to your highest self as a best friend and a confidant. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. And actually it makes it, in my opinion, for example, if I didn't have the altar, like maybe I didn't have the idea of lighting the video and putting the letter to God, so it's there. So I have more access to do something, right? To put it out there or.
Yeah, exactly. And even now on a bodily level, so there's the mind aspect of, okay, there's the practical place where I go and do my meditation or my solitude practice. The spirit aspect is I am important. I'm renewing that. The bodily aspect is the feeling that we get, knowing that there is a space that we have dedicated just to ourselves and to the divine, which is the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the CDO is beautiful because that is a connection to you, your history, your mother. That's sort of a representation of her energy. Because ancestry is hugely important when we do ancestor work, when we do connecting to, and that can be genetic ancestors, and it can also be spiritual ancestors. It could be other incarnations that we've experienced over many lifetimes. And that's going to get me to the next point of what do we put on the altar. But that means something to you, Gloria, and therefore it's charged with love and with energy. And your mother is religious, but you're not so religious. And yet you use that. And when you use the CDO, you are connecting to her, to God, to the highest self, great spirit, whatever it is that you believe in, great mystery, right? And so it's an honoring, again, a sacred space. Like you said, I want to make it a little more sacred. So that's
Yeah,
why.
that's it. That cereal before it was like in a high drawer that I couldn't never reach, and my mom is always, "Did you like the cereal?" I'm like, no, because I don't like. I cannot, like, it's not in easy access. And she's like, well, take it out from there, and she was always like referring to it. And at some point that cereal was like, I don't know where I put it because we move houses. Like, I'm just carrying the cereal everywhere. And now it has a place. But so that's good. I didn't see it that way, that brings also my mom energy, and it's a good way to see it also, and to think about that. my mom is the person that she always, and maybe like all mothers, like, pray for their kids, and so I will say that lighting that, it will be like if my mom and I were like praying for the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yes, and it means, I guess I'm stressing this a lot, but it means something to you. And that means that you have your energy and of course your mother's energy infused with it, which gives it immense power, right? This isn't something you just picked up at the dollar store, right? And by the way, if you pick up a candle at the dollar store, you can infuse it with your energy, but don't, not dissing the dollar store, but but because this has a story to it, and it was gifted to you with love, then it has a very specific power to it. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what goes on your altar. And I think that what Gloria shared, and Christina, I'm going to address your part too. In fact, let's do that first, because we're talking about where do we set up an altar. So your altar can be anything, anywhere, just a flat surface that you can convert in some way. So I'm not suggesting you do this, but Christina, even that shelf that's behind you, right? If you put some, and we're going to talk about what to put on it in a second, but that's something, and if that's the room you like to do your solitude practice in, that counts, even if it's a tiny little shelf, right? But the idea, ideally, is to have something that's sort of like a permanent installment. That's, again, a symbol of your commitment and your love to your highest self. And that's the other thing I was going to say. My mind is all over the place. Gloria, that Sadio is also a reminder of your interconnectedness, right? So remember, we don't do this stuff, this inner work and all of this just for ourselves. We do it for others as well, right? So to have something that connects you to your mother is, again, even that is a representation of, why do I better myself? Why do I have a healthy relationship with myself so that I show up in the world in a better way, right? Okay, so picking a spot, you can have something like a little shelf, like that cabinet you have behind you, Gloria. You can create, I know I've had clients in the past who dedicate an entire room, if you have that kind of space, to their solitude practice, and that's the room they're in. Or you can have just an altar in your bedroom or in your whatever space where you can be quiet. That isn't necessarily going to be so I was going to use the word molested, which is a correct word, but that's not the word I want. It isn't going to be bothered by, someone else is going to, feel put out by having your sacred stuff there. So where you have it is up to you. If you can't do that, then, and I have students who do this too, create a new one every time, like I'll have students who will go out into nature and create a little mandala of leaves and stones and sticks, and then do a meditation. That's fine. That's fine. Do that, and then they leave it there for nature to do with what it will, or maybe even for someone else to enjoy. But so that gets us to the point of what goes on the altar. There are a couple of different ways you can approach it. When we set up a traditional altar, there's usually a representation of the 4 elements, right? So usually there's something like a candle in the center. North represents earth. So the top part of your altar would be earth. So you would get rocks, stones, that kind of thing. East is air. So you might have feathers, incense, other things that represent air to you, maybe a photo of wind, you know, like a little illustration of wind. South is fire. So, and again, that could be, you could put another candle there. You could have things that are the color of fire, oranges and yellows and reds. Again, you can have little icons. Excuse me. Yeah. And then west is water. So on my altar, I have a glass of water that I refill, clean out and refill once a week. But there are other things. You could have I have little turtles and things like that, you know, little images. So water images, lots of frogs because I love frogs. You know, could be photos too. So that's a traditional altar. You are not at all required to do that. If you want to, great. If that speaks to you, fine. I mean, I'm sure you can go on the internet and look at a whole bunch of different types of traditional altars. Perhaps one that speaks to your ancestry or your culture, and decide how you want to do that. For the purposes of your solitude practice, you can do a traditional altar and add to it, or you can not do a traditional altar at all and just have a collection of things that you love. And I call those power items, right? So they are items that are infused with your personal energy, right? They are items that mean something to you. So in this week's video, I give a few examples. It could be photos of ancestors, family members, teachers, anything that inspires you, you know. And it could be, it doesn't even need to be like for teachers, it doesn't even need to be an actual teacher. It could be someone who inspires you, you know, whether that's Dalai Lama or, you know, Jesus or Patti Smith. I love Patti Smith, you know. So it doesn't matter. People who make you feel full in yourself, right? So photos are great. Drawings are great. Little images I'm trying to find. I can't, not on my desk, I guess. But sometimes, you know, those little, like little glass animals or ceramic animals or images or whatever. Gemstones are great. You know, you can have gemstones if you like gemstones. Even I also talked about this in the video, but my son's altar, which he's had since he was about 4 years old, is it's a collection of leaves and sticks, basically. And then he's got different things that have meant something to him. He's turning 14 next month. So he's been adding to his altar. It's got his baby teeth. It's got like a crystal skull. I brought him back from New Mexico. It's got like little tchotchkes, little Lego people that he made, you know, because they mean something to him. That's all that matters, right? So so if we go back to the purpose of why we create an altar for our solitude practice, it's so that we have a concentrated energy spot, a sacred spot that's your concentrated energy. So all that matters is that it means something to you, right? Some people like to put coins or money, you know, if you want to, it's a little bit of magic there that you're drawing that in, like the letter that you wrote, Gloria. All those things work. Any questions before I say the next part?
I want to ask you something. I remember at some point in other courses, you say that sometimes if we walk outside or in nature, we can find objects that speak to us, right? Many months ago, I was walking on the beach, and a friend of mine sent me a text that and it was a little bit irritated how I took it. And I was like, I'm in this beautiful fucking beach, and he's just put me in a bad mood, you know? And then I was walking, and then I saw like a shelf. Is that the name? Like,
So,
okay.
mhm.
And I was like, this is so beautiful. I never seen a shelf, and I'm not a person easy to impress. Like my husband is like, so he gets impressed with everything. I'm not easy. I'm like, he's like a kid impressed with a butterfly or something. I'm not impressed easily. And I was so impressed with that shelf, and I took it, and I was just like almost crying when I see the beautiful how it was. And then I showed it to my husband. He's like, oh, okay. He wasn't impressed. And I'm like, this is weird. Like he normally gets impressed. And my question to you is like, if we find objects like that, like even though like probably maybe the meaning that I took is like life was just telling me like, oh, don't be upset. There's beautiful things around you, and and put it right in front of me. Um, should we? I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me. I just want to grab it because it took my attention. But those things also can be in the altar, like things that speak to us that probably like doesn't mean anything. I don't know.
Well, what's I think you already know the answer to that question. What do you think? What do you think? Would that fit on your altar? Would that feel good to you on your altar?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking because it's from the ocean. Maybe I can put it like if I'm doing the four things, I can put it in the water.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not easy to pick up things like on the street or outside. So that was like so maybe that's why it's not in my altar. It's like I don't know where I put it. So maybe like yeah, I should put it there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was trying to connect the fact that you say and in another conversation that we can walk and find things. But I don't remember if that time you say like you kind of set the intention and you start walking and
Mhm.
paying attention. At that time, I wasn't putting the intention. I was just walking, and it
Right.
still speak to me, you know.
Yeah. Well, that must have been pretty strong then, that
Mhm.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was just about to go on to say. Um, so thank you for oops for for bringing that up. Um, yes, if you don't know what to put on your altar and you want to have a little great, I find this to be a great game. Or if you know what to put on your altar, but you still want to play this game, I highly recommend it, which is, yeah, you go into nature with the intention of finding something that calls to you that you're going to put on your altar. Um, and just let it speak to you. You know, you'll know when you get there. So the story for me was I was looking for something um, for my altar, and I was in New York City at the time. I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to find on the street in New York City, but I'm going to keep my eyes open. And about two two blocks, I found this gorgeous pink gemstone, polished on this just on the sidewalk. And it wasn't, it was probably, piece of crap, whatever, but I remember it jumped out at me as it was a tumbled stone and was shiny and pink. And it was decent size too. It was like that. So I said, well, okay, then that must be the one that I'm supposed to. And so, you take it and you say thank you. And sometimes if you really want to be careful, you can ask, can I take you? Right. And you'll get the answer right away. Can I put you on my altar? And so yeah, we never know what we're going to encounter, which really speaks to your point, uh, Gloria, which is sometimes they jump out at us when we're not even trying to look for them. Right. So that's a perfect example. I can guarantee you that 80% of the stuff on my son's altar, he was not trying to find. But there was a time in his life when rocks and sticks and leaves would speak to him. And he would just be like, I have to take that for my altar. And now there's like this pile. I said, you might want to clean this. I swear there are probably leaves there that are almost as old as he is. Um, so But he won't. To this day, he will not clean it. He's like, nope, that's it. That's the altar. But I appreciate that he still has it. And who am I to say what's right for his altar, right? So that's the main point, is that it's for you, and whatever calls to you. And again, whether your husband gets it or not is irrelevant, right? It means something to you.
Yeah, the point of my husband is not like he needs to approve. Like, I was just like curious because I normally don't get excited or like
Right.
surprised, and I'm like, he's gonna love this, I need to show it to him, and he's like, whatever. And I'm like, okay. So maybe this was only for me, and I am the only who sees this, right? Which is better for me, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. And so, going through what are some things when we talk about putting an altar together, you may already have a lot of things scattered around the house that would be great for your altar. You pull them together and arrange them the way that you wish. Again, you can use the 4 elements or not. This is for you, right? I like to use the 4 elements because it's a nice base for me, and then I can add things to it. But that's just my personal taste. But there's no wrong way to do it. But
Okay.
so really so any questions about the altar? Because that's your homework invitation for this week, is to create and or embellish your current altar space.
No, it's great. Thank you for taking, I mean, like probably you say this at the end of the video and I didn't get to listen that part. And I've heard you before talking about the altar, but I needed like a little like how to do it again, like, and it's great what you're saying about the 4 elements. And yes, like you say, probably there are many things in the house that can be there, right?
Yeah.
I want to ask you very quick also, when I'm okay being alone, like I don't feel like I cannot be alone, but just to clarify and be more specific with the solitude, it's not the same if I'm alone just because I'm alone. I need to be conscious of like I'm spending this time alone, right?
Yeah. It's setting the intention to spend time with yourself, doing something that you love, right? So I guess that's how you would define a solitude practice: intentional time alone, doing something that you love for the purpose of connecting with yourself, shutting the outside world out for a moment, and recharging your soul's batteries. It's your chance
when we say the intention, can we just say it in our minds, or should we say it out loud, or we just know that we're doing this with purpose, right?
Yeah, it's not
with the purpose of being alone.
Right. Yes. It's the intention is, I give myself this gift of solitude. That's all. It doesn't, if you want to set an intention like this solitude practice, I'm going to write in my journal about boundaries. I'm going to write in my journal about my relationship with my mother. I'm going to write in my journal about deepening my spirituality. That can be an intention that you set. But I'm talking about just setting the intention to spend time with yourself. It doesn't have to be necessarily a specific intention other than that. And what that does over time is it gets our mind, body, and spirit into a state where we are honoring ourselves. Whereas usually we'll go through our day and we'll do things, and maybe you have a couple minutes for a cup of tea by yourself, but you're still thinking about all the stuff you have to do, or someone you have to call, or this or that. And this is a dedicated time that's just for you to do something joyful with yourself. Play, take a walk, take a bike ride, take a bath, do something that just makes you feel good. And it could be cooking, it could be sewing, it could be anything, whatever you're into. But the difference between just finding yourself with no one around and therefore you're alone and making this into a practice is like the difference between sitting quietly in the waiting room at the dentist office and sitting on your Zafu pillow and doing a meditation, right? There's an intention there. Even though you're still sitting quietly, there's an intention in the fact that, okay, I'm entering into a meditative state now. Now, that doesn't mean you can't meditate in the waiting room, but that would be your intention. Rather than just sitting alone, going like, well, I guess this is my solitude practice, you know, and then the phone rings and you answer it. This is uninterrupted, right? So start with 5 minutes, try to get yourself up to 20 or more if you can. And some days it's going to be different. Some days you only have 5 minutes. Maybe some days you only have 2 minutes to just do a few long, slow, and deep breaths and some kind of a moment of self-love. But sometimes you might have all day, you know, that's great. But the point is, yeah, that you're doing this with the intention of rejuvenating yourself, spending time with yourself, enjoying your own company. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful. And what this does over time, believe it, just like a meditation practice can help you stay calm in stressful moments. A solitude practice allows you to stay grounded when you would otherwise be thrown off your center by other people and other energies around you. You get used to honoring yourself, especially like if you have to create a boundary and you're you're starting to suffer from imposter syndrome, or you're comparing yourself to others on social media. When you do a solitude practice long enough, you just stop doing that because you're like, wait, this is not in alignment with the love that I have for myself. This is not how I want to treat myself, right? Does that make sense? And it's an unconscious thing. That's just like any practice. We burn new neural pathways that say, you know, that remind us that we are important and need, you know, that all of the good things that we are, everything that happens comes from us, right? Whatever energy we show up with in the world. So, yeah. Beautiful.
Great. Thank you. Yes.
Any other questions about solitude? Any aversion to solitude? Does anybody not like being alone? Yeah. Yeah.
No aversions.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to mention, because I thought that story, Gloria, was so beautiful about when you found that shell. And I don't know if this will be true for you, but, you know, I have some stones on my altar that I brought home when I was in New Zealand from the beach. And I love to pick these stones up off my altar and I hold them and touch them, and they feel very sacred and special. And I think that even though if you don't realize the purpose of that shell, I think the purpose is that it's just beautiful. And I think it can remind you when you touch it or look at it of that experience that you had when you saw it, of like utter joy, that you were like in awe of this thing that appeared to you in nature. So I just thought I'd share that because that's when I saw these stones on the beach in New Zealand, I was like, I mean, if I could have fit more in my suitcase, I would have. They were so beautiful.
Thank you for that. And that gave me just this idea of like, because at that moment I was literally almost crying of the bad mood that I was putting into in all the situation. And then I just shut the shelf. So So that gives me just the idea of when maybe I'm having like a very not good moment to go back to the shelf and just as a reminder of like that the situation can change, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
like you can tune into that feeling again, I
mm,
think. It's like holding that and
Mhm.
yes, thank you so much.
That's what makes it a power item. So when
Mm,
you and I don't know if you also got the download of Celebrating Solitude, which I sent around the my book. I
mm,
sent everybody the PDF version, the ebook of Celebrating Solitude, and there's a chapter in there about power items and
mm,
and what they mean, and that's exactly what Christina said is 100% on target with that message, which is it's it brings you to a place, remembering a moment of joy, or it's a symbol of that moment, or it's a symbol of that trip, right? Which is why we take souvenirs anyway. I mean, and I know when you're traveling, you just want to take so many things with you, you know. Um, I certainly did. And, I actually, my trips to Mexico, there were so many things I wanted to bring back with me, just take some dirt, I'll just take some dirt, which I don't even think is legal, but uh, I'm not going to admit to that. I did not bring dirt back. Um, oh, I have a funny customs story about coming back from Mexico. Well, I found a shell as well that I loved, and apparently it was full of sand, and I got stopped in customs because they thought it was drugs. So the guy, I was like, oh no, like, and so he's going through my bag and he took the shell and he just dumped it, and like all the little sand came out. He goes, oh, that must have been it. And I was like, good, because not that I was like smuggling drugs or anything, but it was like nobody wants to get stopped in customs. Oh my God,
mhm.
it was so funny. But and I love that shell, and that came from my one of my trips to Mexico. So
What part of Mexico?
that trip was Puerto Penasco.
Mm, mm.
And but yeah, it was so fun. Yeah, so power items, that's what makes them power items, is they are infused with your energy. That's what matters. Yeah. All right.
Nice.
So go make your altars and have fun, and write your letters to yourself and
awesome.
send them to me.
Yes,
All right.
yes,
And
I
I'll see you
will.
all on Tuesday, I hope. Or
Yeah,
I'll just fly solo again.
Yes, no, I'll be there.
I'll be there.
All right. Right on. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye bye,
Bye.
you too.
Everybody.
Bye.